Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya and today we will talk about Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's statement on Pulwama terror attack and find out how honest is Pakistan. In a televised address on Tuesday, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan denied his country's involvement in the Pulwama terror attack. Imran Khan's statement comes 5 days after Pak-based Jaish-e-Mohammed carried out a suicide attack in which 40 Jawans of CRPF were martyred. Imran Khan also said that Pakistan will act if evidence is found against anyone in Pakistan, but did not utter a word about Pakistan-based internationally recognized terrorist organization Jaish-e-Mohammed, which has claimed the responsibility for the dastardly terror attack in Pulwama. After the Pulwama terror attack, India had once again urged the United Nations to brand Pak-based Jaish chief Masood Azhar as a global terrorist. India has also withdrawn the most favored nation MFN status to Pakistan and sought immediate and verifiable action from Islamabad against Jaish-e-Mohammed. So how honest is Pakistan and its Prime Minister in their claims, and what should be the future course of action from here onwards? For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests today. Let me start by introducing them to you, beginning with Mr. Pinakaran Chakraborty, former Secretary of Ministry of External Affairs. We also have with us retired Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, former Director General of Military Operations, and Professor Harshvi Pant, Distinguished Fellow and Head of ORF's Strategic Studies. Let me begin with you, Mr. Chakraborty, to try and understand what Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has said in his televised interview, because there were three highlights. One, he was trying to deny, any involvement from Pakistan. Two, I was saying that Pak is now ready to go ahead and talk about terrorism as well.
Well, somehow, there's a sense of deja vu here because, after the Mumbai attack, they said a very similar thing. And I think till today we are waiting for them to actually, convict anybody, those who were involved or who are well known now, etc. And when they are pressed for it, they will say, where is the evidence? So Imran Khan is also saying, if we have evidence, and when you give them the evidence, they say this is not enough. You cannot convict anybody on this evidence. This is a rigmarole that they have played for such a long time. That it is, it's like a very stale khichdi, which you can't eat anymore, and needs to be thrown away. And it's not worth. And of course, he's being told what to say. I think it's the army's heavy hand. You can read between the lines as to what he's saying. And then, of course, appealing to the UN. I mean, this is a standard thing that they do all the time. And so it's nothing new. And in my view, it's the same old same old words, same old thing uttered by a new Prime Minister.
And if he was so convinced, Mr. Chakraborty, then the very fact that, the statement is coming 5 days after the Pulwama terror attack, and the argument which was given by Prime Minister Imran Khan is that there was a high, level visit, the Saudi Crown Prince was visiting and didn't want focus to be shifted there. So why not make the same statement the next day if you're so convinced about it?
Well, it's the choice of timing is perhaps, their call in the sense that they didn't want to muddy the waters while the high-level visit was going on, and that too of their great friend and patron, the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince, who of course has been doling out money to them in the hope that Pakistan will act as their mercenary soldiers. They've asked for soldiers, more soldiers to be stationed. Obviously, Saudi Arabia itself may be a bit jittery about its own. When I served in Saudi Arabia way back in the early 80s, there was actually a whole Pakistani division which had come in and deployed there at the request of the Saudis after the 79 siege of Makkah, if you remember. And because the Saudi royal family felt so jittery about their own safety from within, because the people who laid siege to Makkah at that time were actually Saudi tribals, who were unhappy with the royal family. So they actually got the Pakistanis to act as their Praetorian Guard, the soldiers, to protect the royal family. So there is a long, long history of this kind of a relationship.
So another tactic by Pakistan per se. General Bhatia, as Mr. Chakraborty is pointing out, and the way this statement was given by the Pakistan's Prime Minister, it looks like these are the same old words. Just the man on the screen has changed.
Yeah, absolutely right. This is an established pattern. Every time there is a high-profile terrorist attack, and these are statements which come out. So this is as per established pattern. It's a script which is written by the Pakistani army. Even I'm given to understand by some reports that the Pakistani Prime Minister's speech, 6-minute video, has got 20 odd edits. So obviously it is at the at the behest of the Pakistani army. So I think the Pakistani army is central to the whole thing, and the Pakistani army is in a very happy situation. It has the authority without the accountability. The accountability rests with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and the authority is with the Pakistani army. So that is something which we need to actually see. And Prime Minister Imran Khan's statement also, if you look at it, it has got nothing very much to no change in it. And but it is a statement that comes from an elected Prime Minister of Pakistan. So we've got to take note of that.
Okay, Mr. Pant, if you look at the way in which this statement has come and the kind of words which has been chosen by the Pakistan Prime Minister, there doesn't seem to answer any of the questions which have been raised by India so far.
Well, they never do. So I think one can reject it with the contempt that it deserves. And the pattern that we have highlighted time and time again being the, underscores the reality with which we live and with what we confront in our neighborhood. So presumably the Pakistani establishment, the military-industrial complex is recognizing the need for some sort of a communication with the rest of the world, because I think in the initial phase there was a sense in which global outrage was so high that Pakistan was seen to be very marginalized. And then you had the visit of the Crown Prince, which seemingly have given them some succor, some substance, and I think that has allowed them to project a sense of, with some confidence, their own side of the story. And I think that's why he came out at a time and place of his choosing, because that seems to be the larger sort of a rationale behind the strategic picture, which is now emerging, that the rest of the world on one side, China, Saudis and perhaps UAE on one side supporting Pakistan, that is largely going to be the pattern that we are going to witness. And somehow that seems to have allowed them that space to at the same time, take one step forward and 2 steps backwards as far as this discussion is concerned. So I don't think they're ever going to answer the fundamental questions that we have raised, that India continues to raise. What they're going to do is, like in the past, they're going to, go around in circles, and we are, and expect us to somehow again give them the benefit of doubt. In this case, perhaps there is a new Prime Minister, and you recall every time there is a new Prime Minister, there is some hope in certain quarters in India that something will change, and even with Mr. Imran Khan that was the case. So I think perhaps by putting his face out there and by making some sort of an announcement about that give us evidence and we will work around it and we will see what can be done. I think Indian policymakers hopefully have seen what has happened in the past, and perhaps we would ignore it and with the contempt that it deserves.
Okay, Mr. Chakraborty, the kind of words which were chosen by Imran Khan and the overall text of his speech, does it also indicate in some way or the other that the way India has moved in all aspects, diplomatically, economically, trying to corner and isolate Pakistan, it was just trying to deflect attention, as Professor Pant was pointing out, maybe buy some more time, put in some more irrelevant argument into the field?
Well, they will certainly argue whatever they think their strategy is, as per their strategy, which is to deny, for example, that it had ever happened, that Pakistan has anything to do with it. Yet at the same time, they will say, give us evidence, we will cooperate. So this is the same old script. So there's nothing new in it. So that is they will again appeal to the UN, which I think the foreign minister has done. Look, the security situation is bad, please come and intervene. Now, what does this all mean? It means that they are in a situation of a bit of nervousness, because they do not know how India will react. And we need not, of course, display or disclose our cards as to how we will react. Some of it you will see slowly coming out. High commissioners have been recalled. The MFN has been revoked. The Bollywood industry has decided not to use anything, any actor or any music from this thing. So slowly it's building up. These are the, you can call them the soft options or whatever, but MFN is not a soft option. It has an impact on trade. We export more than we import. So there will be an impact on that. But I think these are all part of the slow build-up of our, what we feel is in our toolkit, and we begin slowly. It is a matter of step by step. We don't have to do everything at the same time.
And in the FATF also, the push which
don't
India is
forget
making.
that also we are getting important visitors, including the Crown Prince in the next few days. There is the President of Argentina in town. So, there are various other factors that we have to take into account. Hence, you will have to wait and see how we react. And react we will, I think.
General Bhatia, on the reaction part, as Mr. Chakraborty is saying, react we will, but in a measured way and not revealing our cards specifically. But what exactly, because this is the same statement which comes in from Pakistan every time. So how, this time around, we'll have to deal with it in a different manner so that they are forced to act?
Yeah, absolutely. We need a multidimensional approach to the whole thing. It has to be all-encompassing. We have to take our time. It's a well-considered approach. And there are many approaches to it. It's not that India does not have options. We have to understand today India is a risen, responsible power. It's a global leader. And we have the might and economic might. We have the diplomatic might, power. We have the military might. We've got to synergize them and make sure that Pakistan, as I keep saying, the low-cost, high-impact option which Pakistan has exercised. And they keep on exercising near impunity and with perpetuity. And if we do not get back and raise the costs and the cost of raise the Pakistani army, because Pakistani army drives the state policy, and if we do not raise the cost of the Pakistani army, I think we will have to suffer the consequences again and again and again, which we cannot afford. So this is something we have to see because it's the Pakistani army which is doing it, and the cost for the Pakistani army have to be raised in all the dimensions. And we all know that Pakistani economy is under stress. They cannot really afford very much, and so is the Pakistan military also under stress because the economic might is economy-wise they are under stress.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that it's all encompassing. We have certain things like even the Indus Water Treaty. I think there's a need to review it, or if not abrogate, at least review the whole thing. We'll have to put pressure from the Afghanistani side. We have to get the other. We got strategic partner 38 countries, so we got to get them on board. We got multilateral organizations which we are part of, get them on board, and we have to put pressure on Pakistan on all sides. They cannot do what they are doing.
Okay.
And it's not only India; it is also Afghanistan. It's also Iran. Terror is, of course, we are a major country which is facing terror, but it's also Afghanistan, Iran, and other countries also.
Okay.
So we have to get them all together. And I don't know whether it's how we're going to do it. I would not like to go public over it, but there are very many ways of doing it. And military, of course, definitely remains a very logical option.
Okay.
But it'll take time because we need to have a right time for it. It is not that we do it immediately. There's no hurry in it. But we have to have a strategy, a Pakistani strategy. It should not be based on an event. When something, a high-profile attack occurs and then we start talking about it, we have to have a consistent Pakistan strategy in the near to mid-term and the mid to long term.
Okay. Professor Pant, two significant aspects from the statement which came in from Pakistani Prime Minister, and one of them is wherein he said that, Pakistan is willing to go ahead and talk about terror every time India says that, any talk will be linked to the talk on terror as well. But significantly, our Prime Minister yesterday had said that the time to talk is over now.
Yes, and I think, General was mentioning about our strategic partners, and a lot of them, for a lot of them, I think the issue has always been that they agree with us on what we present to them with respect to Pakistan and terrorism. But then what? I think we need to ask our partners, and in fact, countries including China, that, what are you doing about it? It's not enough to say things which seemingly are nice, but then how do you walk the talk? And those sorts of questions, presumably even now when the Saudi Crown Prince is going to be in India, I think are important questions for us to answer, because these are relationships where presumably you think that Saudis are interested in India for different reasons. China also wants a partnership with India for global reasons. So why not ask these questions to these countries specifically targeted at Pakistan? This is our most important security challenge. What are you going to bring to the table for it. And I think largely, if you see, General rightly mentions that Chinese army has to be targeted. Pakistani army has to be targeted. But how do you do that when you have partners like China and Saudi supporting with the kind of money and logistics that have been possible over the last few decades and even now? So I think the questions that we have to ask are not simply of Pakistan and what Pakistan can do. We know what they are going to say. But I think of those countries which seemingly always condemn these acts but then do nothing about it on the ground. So I think that diplomacy will have to also become a bit hard-edged. It can't be diplomacy as usual. So if China is not doing enough to bring Masood Azhar to the United Nations, then I think we should be equally transparent with them and say this can't continue. There has to be some costs in terms of what China is doing with regard to Pakistan. So I think what we are looking at, which I think this government has done well over the last few years in terms of isolating Pakistan, but again the isolation is not enough to generate the kind of momentum that we want to see within Pakistan, changing the direction of Pakistani policy.
Looks like some more pressure will have to be put. And as Mr. Chakrabarti, as General Bhatia was saying, and Professor Pant was also seconding him, that the costs will have to be raised for the deep state in Pakistan, that is the Pakistani army specifically, or the intelligence wing. So how do we go about doing that? Because, this is, everybody says that every time this is a scripted one, which is being, these kind of statements which are coming in, scripted statements handed out by the army establishment there.
I think we have to use the window of opportunity that we have today, which is that the Pakistani economy is at a very low ebb. They have foreign exchange reserves which won't last for more than 2-3 months of imports. So I think the economic domain probably provides us with the maximum number of tools that we can use to bring pressure on Pakistan. Economic pressure is a huge pressure
and increase
on any country.
Hold.
On any country, economic pressure is a huge pressure. Take, for example, that if the government of India were to decide that any ship, commercial ship, that touches Karachi will not be allowed to dock in India. Suppose, I'm just speculating, I mean, it may not happen. Or, for example, those who do business with Pakistan, if we can bring such pressure on them that you either do business there or here, take your pick. That's the kind of economic pressure that you can think of. There may be many others, I do not know, but one has to sit down and this has to be discussed. And airline closure of airspace, you can do things like that. For example, flights into Pakistan which overfly Indian territory, we can say, sorry, we will not allow you to overfly. I mean, those will raise the costs for their airline, for everybody. And then it will create pressure on the Pakistani economy. So there are methods, and I think not just this, but there are many more. So I think we should examine those options.
General Bhatia, on the military options, again, if you look at closely, the words which have been chosen by Pakistani Prime Minister, he's raised the, strike bogey or war bogey, saying, if India strikes, then Pakistan will definitely retaliate. Interestingly, in official statements so far, India has never said that, we will conduct a strike against Pakistan. Yes, our Prime Minister and others in the government have said that those who have done this will have to repay. So what exactly is Imran Khan trying to do by raising that bogey? That looks like a scared or like an insecure sort of nation speaking there.
It's like a culprit seeking anticipatory bail. So that is what I would put it. But Imran Khan, Prime Minister of Pakistan, has to realize, can Pakistan bear the economic cost of a war? Do they have the economic strength to actually even mobilize for war, leave aside retaliate? They do not have that. The economy is already under total stress. Not that we can afford it at a pinch. We also have this thing, but we can afford it. We're such a huge country, we're a large country, we're a large economy. We wouldn't like to get retarded, but the fact is that between the two, Pakistan can't afford even mobilization for a war, leave aside the retaliation of a war. So I'm sure they realize that it is more, this is more for the domestic consumption that retaliate, which politicians normally do, and especially the Pakistani politicians are known for it. And this I think in any case the script has been given to him by the Pakistani army. We have to understand the Pakistani army is, the relevance of the Pakistani army It's a domestic compulsion, it's economic compulsion for them. Their relevance is based on seeking parity with India. So that is something which they've been doing all along, and that's a script being played out. And like I said earlier, this is a script given to the Prime Minister by the Pakistani army.
Okay.
And retaliate what? They don't have the strength, the military strength. They don't have the electronic strength. They can't even mobilize electricity.
Okay. So, Professor Pant, as General Bhatia is saying, it looked like a culprit seeking anticipatory bail.
Yes, but this is also a part of their long-standing tradition of how they've responded to such challenges. Because a standard operating procedure for them is to bring in the international community and to make a case. Look, there's South Asia is a most dangerous flashpoint on the face of the earth. Do something about it. Mobilize international opinion so that everyone comes to India and says, don't escalate. I think that is again, we have seen that script being played out in the past. So again, India will have to respond in a calibrated manner at a time and place of its own choosing, rather than being dictated by what Pakistan is trying to do. And I think Ambassador mentioned, India has a very interesting window of opportunity. I would say it is not only about the Pakistan economy is collapsing, but it is also about how India is favorably positioned in the global balance of power today. If you look at our relationships with major powers, we are very well placed. And I think this is the time where India can take certain risks with Pakistan and make some decisive choices, because if you look at the kind of outrage that this has generated, if you look at the kind of support India has gained, it is very significant.
Okay.
So I think that argument, will have to be, how do you respond to this challenge, needs to be looked at in that light. India is not the India of 90s or 80s. So I think that in and of itself provides India enormous opportunities and enormous options to deal with what is happening towards what Pakistan has been doing to India.
And a lot of elbow room as well to try and maneuver its responses. Mr. Chakraborty, final comment from you. In a nutshell, the situation right now, specifically after the Pakistan Prime Minister's response as well, how do you think, or rather see things moving from here onwards?
As I said, that there are options, and I think the government of India will be looking at those options very carefully. Don't expect anything, overnight. Don't expect that something will happen tomorrow or day after. Whatever will happen, and I'm sure that it is going to take some time, and it will be phased out over a period of time, so that slowly the options are exercised and the pressure builds up. And of course, in between, there is always a possibility of using a kind of a more muscular response through the military, which it can be done, and I think we have the capacities. But it also requires, very good high-grade intelligence in terms of pinpointing certain locations where, these culprits are there, etc. Because I don't think it makes any sense to do any random kind of strikes, which is quite meaningless. And as has been said here by General Bhatia, that how do we raise costs? I mean, he used that phrase, which is the right phrase to use actually. How do we raise the costs? And we have discussed, what are the ways to raise the costs.
So that's what the option is. General Bhatia, do you agree that we'll have to ultimately, slowly, steadily raise the costs for the establishment there, specifically the deep state?
Yeah, absolutely. That is what we need to target, and there's no hurry in it. It's a I won't say a long drawn-out process, but it has to be a well thought out, well planned, well timed processes, and it has to be all encompassing. It cannot be one domain, multi-domain, multi-dimensional approach, a well thought out, laid out approach with timelines, with the critical path there, and it has to be done, because this attack is not on a CRPF convoy. It's not a CRPF men. It's an attack on India. We have to understand that. And if we do not do, and we do not do enough, this will keep occurring. It will be occurring earlier. So we have to understand that our security is essential for our growth. Our security is essential for India to become a modern, prosperous nation.
Okay, Professor Pant.
I would just like to add, that I think it's important, especially for Indian polity, to maintain a united front. I'm afraid we have started witnessing fraying of that discussion. People are raising questions about the timing, and people are doing all sorts of politicizing around that issue, which is very unfortunate, because that's a language that Imran Khan also spoke. After all, he also talked about, elections are around the corner and I understand India's compulsions. So I think we have to be very careful in terms of presenting a united front, and that's a big chink in our armor which should not be exposed to our adversaries. Because if we do that, then I think the whole discourse on this gets turned upside down. So it's very important that we preserve our domestic integrity. and realize that Pakistan has to be dealt with in the same coin and paid back in the same coin in which we have been in which we have been targeted. So I think there is a larger picture which others have pointed out, but I think domestic picture is equally important.
Okay, so as our guests have pointed out, that as far as Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's response to Pulwama terror attack is concerned, it looked like a scripted statement, completely old phrases being used to try and deflect the attention. And as far as India is concerned, it has made a calibrated approach to go ahead and target those who are responsible and respond to this particular situation. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.